What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, flying solo today. First solo show ever on this pod, although I've cut my teeth doing solo shows. It's been a while. Excited to do it today. Legs had a conflict that's going to keep him out today and tomorrow, so we're going to take tomorrow off and be back with Legler Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which should be great. Wednesday, we got the NBA Cup on Tuesday night, so Wednesday show will be breaking that down, looking big picture on Thursday, and then reacting to a great slate of games on Thursday night on Friday. So we should have great shows for you all week, including this one, because there is a lot of stuff that has happened over the weekend. Not only did we have the NBA Cup, and we're going to break down both semifinal games, at least a little bit, and look ahead to the final game. We're going to do that today. We're also going to talk about a trade the Golden State Warriors made for Dennis Schroder, which I think is pretty interesting on a couple different levels. And then we're also going to talk about some news and notes from around the weekend, which is where we're going to start with the Dallas Mavericks getting a win over the weekend. And this was an interesting one against the Golden State Warriors. You know, another game for Clay against his old team, which is, we talked about this the last time that those two teams played, that storylines are really what draw fans into the NBA, to sports in general, storylines. And in the NBA, I think over the last 10 years, those storylines have maybe weakened, maybe gotten redundant. You know, there's a lot of different things you could point to, but Klay Thompson and the Golden State Warriors, extremely well-known, the most well-known team of the last decade. And the split there creates an inherent storyline. And this game now, 2 times this season, you know, they match up, and 2 times it has been absolutely must-see basketball, at least these last 2 times. So it's really a compelling storyline, and I thought he played great in this one again, or played very well, and it just was a good game. But really, what this game, actually, let me get to one other point here. Neither team could miss in this game. We had a record number of three-pointers made. It's also a record number of threes for a losing team. The Warriors made 27 threes in that game and lost. Hasn't been done a ton of times in NBA history for a team to make 27. Obviously, the first time that has ever happened when it lost. And this was a really interesting game because you saw, you know, the Mavs getting back to full strength a little bit more. You saw just how potent their offense can be. And I don't think we really have questions about their defense. They're going to have to, you know, win some of these games defensively. And I think they obviously have proven they can do that in the past with the same core. But tonight you give up 27 threes to the Golden State Warriors. You give up 4 different players for the Warriors scoring 20 points. You even get 21 from Draymond. And yet the game was close, but not really. Like, this was not a game. The Warriors made a late push, closed the gap, I think, to like 5 or 6. And you thought, okay, one more stop or one more bucket and things get interesting, but it never happened. Dallas kept scoring and kept getting things done. They put up 143 on a very good Golden State defense. And they did it fairly effortlessly, especially behind Luka Dončić's 45 points, 11 rebounds, 13 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, a little bit of everything, including monster 45 points. And then he did it efficiently, 16 of 23 from the field, 6 of 11 from the three-point line. We've been talking about how Luka's obviously had some big stat lines and some big games, but the shot making this year has been a little bit down. What will it look like with this team that has been performing phenomenally and really on the come up, playing their best basketball over the last month? What will it look like when we see Luka Dončić, you know, join the team at sort of the level of excellence we expect? And what you get is 143 points against one of the better defenses. So you see that in this game, and it really just reminds you of how good Dallas can be. I'm still buying all Dallas stock. I think they're the second best team in the Western Conference by a pretty comfortable margin. And I think they're close enough and have an interesting enough matchup with the Thunder that, you know, we're going to have a very interesting playoffs. But to me, the thing that stood out as I was watching this game, PJ Washington, and I know Mavs fans have been hammering this home all year. When we talked about the game last week between the Thunder and the Mavs, no PJ Washington. Mavs fans very quick to remind us, you know, how important that is. He really is, though, a key to unlocking their fullest potential. I think the Mavs can win without him, although they're only 1-5 this year without him, so maybe they can't win without him. But I think the Mavs are a very good team without him. But he represents something that unlocks the versatility that is really important to them. First of all, he has the length defensively. You know, when you talk about the loss of Derrick Jones Jr., you need a player that can fill that long, mobile on the perimeter and just has some size to him to be able to defend. So it's just a mold of player that's not even necessarily that he's great at it, although he's very good, but it's just a mold of player that you need to have in your tool set. But to me, it's his offensive versatility that makes him so interesting, because in this game, and really all year, but in this game, it really popped for me how much him being able to set the screen and roll, catch on the short roll and make plays, that's obviously been there. But the ability to give him the ball, when you have a Luka, you have a Kyrie, you just think about those two guys are initiating, you can kind of go back and forth. But being able to give the ball to PJ Washington at the top of the key and now invert your offense, now run somebody else at him as the screener and be able to play guys like Luka off ball or Kyrie off ball or both of them off ball in different actions. It's so dynamic. And they had this great play early on in the game. They actually ran it, I think, 3 different times, got different looks out of all of them. But the best one was PJ Washington at the top of the key. Lively comes and sets the screen. He attacks to the basket. Now you're putting 2 bigs. You're putting pressure on the rim for that lob pass and that roll. And PJ Washington as a ball handler. You also don't want to get too many cross matches there. You're going to give up the offensive rebound. So it sucks the defense in, and the kick out, which usually the kick out off of that is going to be a role player, your spot up shooters, maybe a Quentin Grimes who has a little bit of like wiggle off the bounce or whatever, but you're kicking it to a finisher. Well, the finisher in that play was Luka Dončić. And to me, that's the next layer of the Mavs. Obviously, it's something they have in their arsenal. But when you talk about their comfort level, Kyrie very comfortable there, Luka very comfortable there. That third counter, PJ Washington's ability to now take sort of the fulcrum. Again, he's going to be by far below those other 2. But his ability to do that is what really opens things up. So I thought PJ Washington, you know, the numbers speak for themselves. 1-5 without him, 16-4 with him. And even those losses, when you talk about with him, some really narrow ones. So I think the Mavs are, and I said this 2 weeks ago, it's only become more true, they are a sleeping giant. I think all of the metrics are pointing to a team that is actually better than their record, and their record's 17-9 is nothing to be upset about, better than their record, and a team offensively that is becoming unguardable. And that's really the key. When you talk about what the Oklahoma City Thunder were able to do to stifle them a little bit on the offensive end, well, how do you become like playoff proof? I think PJ Washington is the key to that. So because we already know how good the Mavs are, my eyes for the rest of the year, certainly for the next several months, are going to be on PJ Washington and what the Mavs are able to build around an offense that puts him at the fulcrum every now and then, and maybe over and over and over again in certain matchups just to throw a curveball. I'm curious to watch how that develops. I think it's going to develop very nicely. We also had LeBron James returning. And this is an interesting one. So they beat the Grizzlies 116-110. He goes for 18, 8, and 8, played great, looked spry. He had that big highlight dunk in transition. And, there was a lot of uncertainty about why he was gone. The team was not giving a lot of intel about it. Even upon his return, it all seems a little bit, there's a weirdness around why he left. I think the weirder corners of the internet tried to go to conspiracy theories, this or that. I think the answer to that question really came when in the post game, when you talked to LeBron, you talked to JJ Redick and some of the things they said. He missed 9 days, but only 2 games. And this was the quote LeBron had afterward. I mean, it's very rare, to be honest, if you can get a break in the schedule like that. So it was a very easy decision for myself and for the team and for my trainer to be able to take advantage of those days just for everything. So it was great. So I think if we're reading between the lines, and then JJ Redick had a weird comment you can read into if you want, where he said something to like, yeah, it's nice that we can build these in. We just need to communicate better with each other, something like that, almost hinting at there was some sort of communication breakdown between team and player wanting to take this break. I don't know. You can read into it or not if you want to. But what's interesting to me is we obviously have one of 40-year-old LeBron, turns 40 here in 2 weeks. He misses 9 days, but only 2 games. And it made me think, one of the things I always hear armchair basketball analysts, especially the type that, have become popular in the last 10 years, the people that are trying to, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's going to sound negative, the people who are trying to solve the game, right? If we just did this, the game would be better. If we just did this. And one of the things you always hear is reducing the schedule. Get it down to 56 games or something like that, and everything will be great. What I find interesting is it sounds like from LeBron that the fact that there were so few games is exactly why he took time off. Presumably, if there was 5 games in the last 9 days, he wouldn't have taken that time off. So I think that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. And if you were able to schedule or reduce the schedule down to 56 games, yes, every game would mean a little bit more. So missing a game would mean a little bit more. But I also wonder if teams would look at the schedule. I mean, Jamal Murray, I think, saw this in Denver where the schedule thinned out. He misses he misses like 2 weeks, but only 3 games. And I just wonder if more teams would look at that, and more players would look at that and say, you know what, I'm going to take 2 weeks off because I'm only missing a little bit. This is one reason why I'm very anti-shortening the schedule. I'm open to it when we talk about reducing it to 75 games so we can eliminate back-to-backs or, small reductions. But this idea that if we cut it down to 50, what are we going to get? I fear you're going to get similar numbers of injuries prorated for the amount of games you play and similar amount of load management, because it doesn't make less sense for guys to take time off. The regular season's always going to be a marathon. And one of the things I believe about basketball is that endurance, physical endurance, and the ability to stay healthy is a part of it. And that affects, how you train, how you feed your body, how you play as a team, a whole host of things. But LeBron's back. It sounds like he's fully healthy, and it's not a thing that, there's like some lingering stuff. And he got that long rest. We know with LeBron that he has thrived and has taken advantage of opportunities to get extended breaks, either in the middle of the season, historically. Remember when he went to see the LeBron James of feet a year back or a couple years back, comes back rejuvenated. We know, especially at his age, that these types of breaks are important. So my suspicion is he's going to have a very good couple week stretch on this rest. And my suspicion is this might not be the last time he exits the team. If they can maintain their standing, maybe later in the year as you get ready for the playoffs, it would behoove him and benefit the team to take a little bit of break off. So just one thing I kind of noticed from them, but it was a big win. The Grizzlies had been winning. That's a really good win for the Lakers to get that one. They completely bottled up Ja Morant, who's been dynamic this year, one of the toughest people to bottle up, and I thought they did a good job on him. And then scored just enough points, got contributions from enough guys making shots. I think they played 10 guys in this game. So got contributions from enough guys to get what I think is a very, very quality win. And then lastly, rounding out segment 1 here, the 76ers are cursed. We were critical of them, both Legs and I, on Friday's show, and, some of the fumbling that's been going on this year, some of all the different layers around the team. Well, was it Friday or Saturday night, Joel Embiid goes down with a sinus fracture, a portion it looked like, not like on the nose, but more to like the side of the nose area. He gets a fracture. Nick Nurse did not say whether he was going to play tonight until this morning when the team announced that he will be out for tonight's game. So he is going to miss at least one game. I suspect when he comes back, he'll be the masked man again. We've seen him there once before. But how much time do you miss? They have 2 games in a row against the Charlotte Hornets, who are a team that, if you were just looking at the standings, and you're talking about a team where every game matters because of how poorly they've started, you look at that one and go, historically, Joel Embiid's had very good games against Charlotte. They have a thin front line. When they're fully healthy, they have some defensive players there, but they have a thin front line, don't necessarily defend the interior perfectly. And that's a guy that can break that kind of defense. So you look at these and you tell me if Embiid was in, I think they pick up at least one of these, if not both of them, and you start to move. They just need a short winning streak, I think, to kind of get their mojo back. But now you take him out of that game, anything's possible. And then Jared McCain has a tear to his lateral meniscus. Absolutely brutal blow for this team and for him as a player. I mean, McCain was a guy who was firmly in the Rookie of the Year ranking and Rookie of the Year race, was playing great and was the lone, in my opinion, bright spot of their entire season so far there in Philadelphia. And he goes down. So it's unfortunate for him, and I think it's unfortunate for the 76ers, who could just use the bodies. They're 2 games back right now of a play-in and 6 games back of the 6th seed. And the 6th seed to me is really the line for me if I'm looking at the 76ers, because you get back to that play-in, again, you're facing one of those top teams right out of the gate. That's a tough spot to be in. I don't think you want to go to Boston or to Cleveland right out of the package. So can you get up to that 6 seed? Nor do you want to have to play a play-in game. And we talk about health. We talk about the durability to get through an entire playoffs has already been a question for Embiid and the 76ers in their past. But if you talk about adding 1 or 2 games onto the front of that, and remember that team that's in the 9-10 play-in, for you to make it, you have to play 2 games and almost immediately turn around and go and face the 1 seed. there's almost no break. So it's almost like a 7-game series becomes a 9-game series for the team coming out of the play-in. And that's just not a spot you want to put it in. So to me, the 6th seed is the one I look at. If there's a silver lining to the McCain piece, and I don't believe that this has been the case for the 76ers, but there is a level of, if they can get Embiid back on the court, you got Maxey, you got Paul George. They haven't played a ton of games together. With McCain out, it might become a little bit more clear focused of, okay, we have from now till Christmas for those 3 guys to figure out who they are, to really figure out an identity. And there's nothing else going on with the team. I mean, to be honest with you, there's role players that do stuff, but there's nobody else that's almost distracting from like, how do I have to learn their style of play? Everything else is more or less known and guys slot into roles. So if I look at the 76ers and try to squint to see a silver lining for them in this moment, 1, they're in the East, so anything's possible still. And 2, still with Embiid returning, even as the masked man, I would just look at it and say, we have an opportunity here to try to get some wins. They play Detroit at the end of the week. So, Detroit's been scrappy. They've been, competitive despite not being good, but you play Charlotte twice, you play Detroit. Can you find a little bit of rhythm here? To me, is going to be an interesting question to answer here coming up. All right, let's take our only quick break here, because on the other side, I want to get to the NBA Cup games. They're really interesting, and I want to talk about the NBA Cup at length, because now that we're into it a little bit, I think there's some interesting takeaways about what this thing is and what it is not. We'll get to that on the other side. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company, I like that, offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all your outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the pair that matches your team's style. They probably even have it in your team's color. So whatever type of shades you're looking for, even ski goggles, maybe you're going on a big ski trip here over the holiday season, hop on there, purchase some of those, be completely ready. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Also want to tell you guys about FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL action. We're almost at playoff time. You can get ready with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I had this happen to me over the weekend. I had my greatest FanDuel bet win of all time. The Broncos get scored on, and I hop on to place a bet because I'm like, they're going to come back in this game. They're going down 2 touchdowns. They're going to come back. And I placed the bet in the moment in between the touchdown stands and when the touchdown got called back. So the odds for a brief moment shot up to like plus 350 or something like that. Then they review the play, they take it back. And so I somehow got my bet in that nice little middle, which was awesome. Probably the greatest. There was maybe 2 minutes of that window being open to make that, maybe less. And I somehow made a bet. And of course, the rest is history. Denver Broncos come back and win. So visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/AllNBA. 21 and older only, must be present in Colorado. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. All right, back here, All NBA Show, segment 2. We're going to get into some NBA Cup stuff. If you're enjoying the show, go ahead and hit that like button. My partner, Tim Legler, will be back on Wednesday, so you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you set alerts. All right, let's get into the East Coast game first. First of all, a little old man complaint. This game's starting, I think, 2 o'clock Mountain Time on a Saturday. There's some things they're going to have to fix. Let's couch that because I want to talk about it later in just how I feel this tournament is unfolding now that we're in year 2. But that was a real bummer. I mean, just as a person with a family, it was a real bummer that it was like, man, I got to watch this game, but can I catch it live? I always like when it's a big game to watch it live because it's just different absorbing it that way. But that was tough scheduling. It's a 2-point game with 4:25 left. Hold on one second. So it was a 2-point game with 4:25 to go. And Dyson Daniels gets a 3-pointer up at the top of the key, fairly open, uncontested, and he misses it. But not only does he miss it, Middleton's able to get a run out on that off of that play. when you're talking about a game like that, and this is the same with playoffs, these little margins matter so much. You're talking about a game that was 102 to 110. So how do you get to 110 points to win the game? Well, you need plays like that make the difference. And the Hawks are just not a good enough team to be able to afford those ones. Dyson Daniels, incredibly fundamentally sound player, but that was one where I just thought it was poor spacing, and you got to make that shot, or you got to make sure that they don't get a leak out from it. They get a leak out, they go up 4. Then Trae Young took a tough 3. And this is one of the things Legs and I talked about. I really like how the Atlanta Hawks have played this year, and I really like how Trae Young has played this year. This was a game where he got his shots up. You could argue it was out of necessity, and he goes 9 of 18. Wasn't like he was bad. 14 of 17. Drew a lot of fouls. Had 35 points and 10 assists. 7 rebounds, 10 assists. It's ironic to some degree, but perhaps not, that this is an old Trae Young stat line. This is how he always plays. 35 points, 10 assists, incredibly high usage in 40 minutes. But it's also the game where they struggled. Now you could say it was a semifinal. They're playing against the Bucks, of course, but it's just something that I noted. And late in the game, Trae had it going. He hit a couple shots, but he took a couple, including the one I'm talking about, where I looked at it and go, all right, I'm not buying the Hawks making those types of shots and going far in the playoffs or advancing very far. I'm just not buying it. I'm buying some of the other stuff we saw. So Dyson takes the 3, Middleton gets the run out. Trae Young takes a tough 3. Giannis hits a turnaround. It was a tough turnaround that Giannis hit. Not, kudos to him. It was a really tough. It was at the center of the court, so maybe you try to force him a little bit more to the sideline, but he hit a tough one. And with 4 minutes and 25 seconds to go, it was 2 points. And with 3 minutes and 25 seconds to go, it was 7 points. That's the game to me. That's more or less the game, because now you're asking a team to come back from 7 points on this Milwaukee group here, and that's going to be tough. And the very next play was that Giannis block, which was just a 10 out of 10 defensive play. It's the type of defensive play that Giannis can make, Wembanyama can make, Chet Holmgren can make. I'm not sure who else is on the list of guys that can do that. And Giannis, to be honest with you, in big moments, it's reminiscent of the block on DeAndre Ayton in the finals. It was a big-time defensive play and made an incredible rotation. Giannis plays so hard, and he plays so hard in every direction. It's not like some guys play hard on rebounds or in transition or in ISO. Giannis plays hard on all types of basketball plays, diving for balls, rotations as the low man, just different things. And that was a play that was a dunk that turned into not a dunk and really won the game. The Bucks offense in the clutch was a little rough. I want to get to that here in a second. Jalen Johnson had a wide open naked 3-pointer in the left wing and missed it with 90 seconds to go. That would have cut it, I believe, to 2 points. It was a huge shot. The Bucks used a timeout later in the game. They used a timeout because they were trying to inbound it sideline, couldn't get it in. Use a timeout, redrop a play, still couldn't get it in and had a turnover. That's noteworthy to me. When teams struggle to get the ball in late in games, it tells you something about them still figuring out their late game identity, in addition to how many possessions down the stretch just didn't flow well. They just had kind of a clunkiness to them. Nonetheless, the play that really ended it, I mean, all of these plays contributed it, but the play that really ended it was Dame backing up to the logo, getting a running start, getting to about 10 feet and shooting a tough runner, nothing but net. That was the one that sealed it. So for me, if I go to the Milwaukee Bucks now and think a couple notes, the first one is Middleton is going to be so important to what they do in the clutch. And I think that you might not always recognize it, certainly by going in the box score. And you probably won't even just recognize it because you think Dame Giannis, there's your late game offense, 2-man game, you got what you want. But I actually think Middleton is the key for them for a couple reasons. One, he's tall. He reads the court extremely well. We've talked about this in the past. When you're generating offense and stuff, just having somebody that's able to see the entirety of the defense is important. But that height also in a weird way helps him not be sped up. So when guys are trying to press in and speed a guy up, if they're able to trap, an undersized guy, you could try to, okay, I got to get rid of the ball quickly. Middleton does a really good job of using his body and using his length to shield the ball so that the play can develop behind him. Or if he's dribbling with a tight handle, not anything crazy, but a tight handle to be able to keep the defense at bay so you can take the 2 or 3 seconds it takes to set the pin down or to get the action going. So I think Middleton is really important to their late game offense. But in this game, he was 0 of 2 in the clutch. And I think that's the piece for me. It's just we were talking about PJ Washington adds an extra layer. Is he the most important guy? No. Second, no. But when you start to get into, but what unlocks the rest, makes them versatile, Middleton is the same in that way. And then I think he opens up what should give you confidence if you're the Bucks. And he's obviously still working himself back into the game. After the game, We had this quote from Giannis. He says, "We were able to get the ball in, gave it to Dame, and Dame did his thing. He loves to have the ball in his hands down the stretch, get to a spot and put the game away." I thought that one was an interesting one because while that's literally what happened, that was the play from Dame. There was a handful of other ones that didn't. So I don't know if I would take too much solace in that. But when Bobby Portis was asked after the game about the Bucks being title contenders and this win streak that they've been on, or this slew of games, has brought all the good conversations about the Bucks back to starting to ask things like, are they actually title contenders? And Bobby Portis put it what I think is probably most succinctly: I don't think we ever left. The record was what it was. We needed a little bit of straightening, a little bit of practice, a little bit of camaraderie and togetherness. We added some new faces, came in rusty a little bit, didn't play our best basketball. That's why it's an 82-game season. It's not a 10-game season. This is, of course, in reference to this season, but also multi-seasons. And I think if you're a Bucks fan, and I know many of them have good friends that are Bucks fans, I know Bucks fans have felt a sort of like, well, everybody forgot about us over the last few years. And this is what Bobby Portis is talking about. The Bucks still view themselves as a team that is in title contention. And I think right now they're climbing right back into there. I disagree a little bit with him saying, I don't think we ever left. Like where the Denver Nuggets are right now, they went from the favorites to now in that tier of punching up towards the favorites. If you ask me right now, the favorites are the Thunder and the Celtics, and all the other teams, including the Cavs, are trying to punch into that bracket. I think that's where the Bucks are. But the reason that they are there, or you could even make it a case that they maybe deserve a little bit more. I think let's pause for a minute. To me, January 5th, what is it? The 16th, January 16th, a month from now, we're going to have more clarity about exactly how good this Bucks team is. But the reason you can make the case is because Giannis really is that special. He really is that much of an impact player because he impacts the game in so many ways. He had 32 points, so automatically I think he's the leading scorer still in the NBA. You know he can score points. 14 rebounds. We know he can rebound. At 9 assists and then 4 block shots. Defensively, the energy he brings to that team. And more importantly, when we talk about these two teams, 2-point game with 5 minutes to go, it comes down to, okay, well, who has guys that can make plays? We're going to get to this more in the Thunder series here in a second, but it comes down to who can make plays. And you know, when Giannis is on the court, he could be the guy that makes the most plays, no matter who's on the court. Luka, Jokic, Steph, Tatum, doesn't matter who it is. Giannis has the ability to be that guy. And I think he still has an argument for best player in the world. Obviously, I'm a Jokic guy here being in Denver, but also just if I believe Jokic is the most impactful player in the entire NBA. But I think Giannis is having a moment right now this season, but especially over these last 15 games, where he's reminding you that what he does is also equally as impactful in a lot of ways. So for me, Giannis is 10 of 15 from the field, 12 of 18, got to the line, and by the way, made them. As I mentioned, he had a turnaround jump shot, which is, to really elevate and win this game. So I look at what Giannis is doing right now, and I think with the Bucks, they have their 9 guys, which is what they're going to need. AJ Green plays 19 minutes. You get 22 from Middleton and Gary Trent. Bobby Portis gives you 23. That's a nice rotation. I don't think they have stuff behind that, so it's going to be difficult as they go through the season. They might hit some lulls where they have to reduce the rotation, or maybe where they drop a couple games just for depth reasons. But when you look at their top 9 guys going into the playoffs, Giannis has the ability to be the best player in any series, and they're starting to figure little pieces out. I think Chris Middleton is going to be the piece that fully unlocks them. So he's the guy to keep an eye on. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets. This game, we'll start with the Rockets. This game, to me, the Rockets have a championship defense. I really believe that. Their defense is unbelievable. Swarming, causes turnovers, physical, has the right attitude. Everybody's on the same page, makes big plays. But they clearly do not have a championship offense. And I think that's the takeaway you have from this game, is just how difficult it was for them to score. Yes, they were going up against the Thunder, probably the top defense in the NBA. Forget the numbers. If you were just saying who's probably the best, I think it's them, especially when they get Chet Holmgren back. But the Rockets struggle to score anyway, even besides that. And then when you give them that elite of a defense, the numbers are going to get ugly. And that's what happened in this game, 96-111. And it was actually kind of uglier than that, to be honest with you. The first half was I liked it. I saw people like Stephen A. at the halftime show was saying like, oh, this game was so, would the NBA better pray these teams don't make it? I think he's right for a general. The NBA finals need to be like, you need to draw in the casual audience. And I don't know if the casual audience likes to see a halftime score that's below 50 for both teams. But I loved it because I thought the way they play their defense on both sides is very impressive. It's not, oh, they just have some monster roaming the paint and it's hard to score on them, but it's kind of boring. This were two teams that were physical and just flying around. But the Rockets, 25th in open threes. They missed a bunch of open threes in this game. They just couldn't get them to convert. 11 of 46, 24%. You're not going to win against the Thunder team if you don't make your three-pointers. The Thunder in this game were content to pack the paint and to dare them to shoot. So they get 36 up, but they just couldn't make any of them. They're 25th in open threes, 30th in wide open threes, 25th in half-court offense. So if you look at this Rockets team and say, like, where are they in their ascension towards NBA finals contention? I look at it and I think, I don't think they can get there as currently constructed because their offense is so far away, and their defense, to me, can it get better? I honestly don't know if it can get better. It's really good. It's as good as anyone's, but their offense has this limitation to it that I'm really not sure what to make of it. Jalen Green obviously can be a huge part of this, but he's inefficient. And even Alperen Şengün, who I love the way he runs his offense, obviously a Jokic acolyte, he runs his offense really well. Or does a lot of different things, but he still doesn't finish well enough. And that's one of the difference. Jokic, one of the best finishers in the NBA. Also his size. I think it's underappreciated that Jokic might be the strongest player in the NBA. And on top of that, he's 7 feet tall, has this really long wingspan. Şengün, for all of his strengths, doesn't have the same physical advantage over opposing teams as centers. And then his touch is just not the same as Jokic's around the rim. So when you're running your offense through him, inevitably a handful of those shots, or a good percentage of those shots, are going to be back to him around the rim or from the floater zone. And he just doesn't convert those at the moment at a high enough rate. Will he get better? I think he will get better on his touch. He clearly works on it. This year, he's added more right foot. If you guys saw in this video, I did the Jokic baby soundboards, how Jokic always uses his right hand, right foot. It actually comes from Boban, was the guy who really taught that to Jokic. Which is an interesting backstory. But we see Şengün, who's clearly studying Jokic and trying to take from him. He's adding more of these like off-balance finishes and working on them, but the numbers are saying he still has a lot more to go. So I think he'll get better at this, but if you talk about right now this season, are they going to have an offense that contend? I don't think it's going to be Jalen Green figuring it out, because the role that he needs to become is one that is complicated. And he's a young player that is behind on the progress to get there, but to expect him to make that leap in the next 2-3 months, I just don't see it. Do you bring Cam Whitmore back into the rotation? He's an offensive player. He can shoot. Does that help you out? It's interesting that we're this far through the season. I don't know that that is going to be a thing that saves them. So I look at this and I go, I know the Rockets are a team that has wanted to go looking for a star player, but has also said that with the success of this year, maybe that's more of a summer question. Might be the right play. It does mirror, the Rockets do mirror teams like Orlando or even the Thunder a couple years back, where you look at them and say, nobody's taking them true as a contender despite their record being up there, but maybe you just need to get those guys into a playoff series to really know. The playoffs really reveal where your strengths and weaknesses are. Even though you have a hunch, you go and see it play out, what guys step up and where are the weaknesses in your roster. Maybe that's just how they play this out. And they're this elite defense. They win 53, 54 games. They find a top 3 seed this year, but they get to the playoffs and you're worried about them being on fraud watch just because they might get the wrong first round matchup or certainly second round matchup and they just can't score. You bring Cam Whitmore back or you make a trade. Outside of those types of things, I don't see the offense improving. And if you bring Cam Whitmore back, what happens to the rotation you've built that's working really well? What happens to the defense you built? I don't know. The Thunder side, this was an MVP game from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And a long slew of games that are MVP games. Plays 38 minutes, gets 32 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals, 1 block, a little bit of everything. Got to the line 15 times, made 14 of them. Goes 8 of 21 and just makes big plays. He is having a phenomenal cup elimination round right now. And the difference between the Rockets and the Thunder, they both play elite defense. The Thunder have Shai. If you put Shai on the Houston Rockets and you get to that fourth quarter, you're getting good shots off of his own individual brilliance and shot making, and all those questions about spacing, they become a little bit reduced. He is the difference, and he really is the difference for the Thunder because they have other options, including Jalen Williams, who I absolutely love. He goes for 25 and 5 in this one. But you have other options, but at the end of the day, there's the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander piece that makes he's one of the most unguardable players in all the NBA. He's probably top 5 in terms of just how do you match up with this one dude and can he get his buckets when he wants? He made them. And that's why I think it was big. And that's why I think that the Thunder versus the Bucks is a sneaky, interesting matchup. If you asked me right now, I think there are 5 players eligible for MVP. I know we're super early on this, but fans like to talk about it, so I'm going to give a second on it. I think Luka Dončić is very likely going to get back into this conversation. I don't think he is right now. I think he's had a little bit of a rough start. But if you break the year into 3 sections, the first third, second third, and last third, the first third is by far the least important, but probably the one that aggravates people the most. Because you start to, you look at records and you look at all the stuff that hasn't really settled yet in the NBA. There's still too much of a logjam in all these spots. I think it'll be the most forgettable stretch. People will weigh the last one and then the middle one, and then this first one will kind of just be a conglomerate, this blurry little look of, I think so-and-so was good early on, but I don't remember. That's how this will go. I think Tatum and Luka Dončić are in the 4-5 spot right now. And I think that Shai, Jokic, and Giannis are the top 3. And you look at it and say, is Jokic and the Denver Nuggets going to be a high enough seed? Probably not, but you never know. It's close enough now that anything is possible. He's playing, I think he's clearly, in my opinion, been the best player in the NBA through these first 25 games, averaging a 30-point triple-double, top 2 in points, rebounds, and assists, shooting 51.5% from 3. He's just, every single number you look at has been incredible, and the Nuggets record with him in the lineup has been very good. Giannis, I just talked about all the different things he's done, and while his team hasn't, had that really slow start out of the gate, you see that his performance in those games were great. And as the team has gotten it together a little bit more, gotten healthy and this or that, his impact now all of a sudden feels enormous. And then I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be number 1 right now in terms of who you look at, because are they going to be a number 1 seed? Almost a lock, in my opinion, for the Thunder to be a number 1 seed. So the record part's going to be there. Is he a major contributor? When you watch games like the last 2 and you see that when the push came to shove and it was a tight dogfight of a game, down the clutch, they had a guy that was, I just talked about the Bucks struggled to score in the clutch. Shai doesn't struggle to score in the clutch. He scores on everybody. He gives them buckets. So you've got that, and then the numbers have been good enough. So I think those 3 guys are currently probably sitting at the top, but I think all 5 of the guys I mentioned are the guys that are going to be making an argument for it, which brings us to the NBA Cup final, because you have a matchup between the 2. And I think a narrative on the MVP front will swing from this. I think the first ESPN straw poll comes out sometime in late December, which is really, like, if you really want to talk about, the media does get impacted by that. It swings people's votes. It becomes a part of the conversation, and everybody, if you're the only guy that thinks one thing, you start to kind of go to the middle. Well, I think, so that poll comes up later, I believe later this month, and those 2 guys going head to head to me is meaningful. I think that whoever wins this one, especially if one of those guys plays well, is going to steal momentum. So if you're a big into the MVP conversation and you have a dog in the fight, you want Giannis. To me, this game, fair or not, is going to play a big part in that. So what does the NBA Cup mean as a whole now is one of the things I wanted to talk about, because what does this final actually mean? I think, number 1, it gets players to care in November and December, which is important, weirdly important in today's NBA. I think that the season being so long and players' relationship to the league itself, to me, has been a little bit fractured over the last 10, 15 years. And the money incentive and just the fact that it feels like a different thing, there's no question that 2 years in a row, we have gotten really good games in this cup. Not just the elimination round, but even in pool play. Some of the best games of October, November, December, 2 years in a row, have been cup games. So why is it about? It's about getting guys to play hard. It really only affects your core audience because it's not bringing in, as we'll talk about, it's not bringing in other people. But at least the people that like NBA basketball are getting rewarded with really good games that I don't think they would have otherwise gotten. Number 2, it's a showcase for up-and-comers. And I look at this and I go, last year the Pacers made the final, and we talked about it, Tyrese Halliburton gets launched. The Pacers get launched as this like national name, and now they're on the radar. That was huge. It's interesting that this year we don't have that. We had the Rockets. We had the Hawks. Those are 2 teams that I think, had they won their matchup, it would have been the exact same thing. But the fact that they lost in the semifinal, I don't think anybody on the Rockets is getting a bump the rest of the year. Like, Şengün's been great, but I don't know that his Q score amongst NBA fans or even casual fans has gotten a bump from any of this. And I think the same is true of Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, and the Hawks. They fought diehard fans watching the show are probably going to be like, yeah, that was fun. That was a fun run. But I don't know that there's any more name recognition nationally. So that part didn't happen this year, but it is neat that that's part of the story. I think if you're a Hawks player, if you were a Rockets player, you felt that. You felt this like, man, if we can make the final, we're on the big stage. Everyone's going to know my name. Amen Thompson played phenomenally. They won that game and get to the final. I think people are talking about Amen Thompson a little bit more than they will today. But number 3 is maybe the most important, like long-lasting one. So the Lakers win last year, and they were a horrible team the rest of the way. Lose in the first round in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets, who go on to lose the next round. So they were nowhere close to title contention. They win this thing, and in the moment it felt big, and then a month had passed, and it felt like, to me at least, not a joke, but it just felt like it didn't matter. Like, oh yeah, the Lakers won that one thing. It was kind of fun. But does it have any impact on the season? Are we going to look back and say, 10 years from now, 2024, that was the year the Celtics won this and the Lakers won that? I just don't think so. It'll be deleted from historical memory. But what can make it more important, and this year's an example of it, is at some point a team is going to win the double trophy, the in-season tournament and the final. And this year you have 2 teams that theoretically can do that. The Thunder, who should be favored to come out of the West and maybe win their first title. And you have the Milwaukee Bucks. And I look back at this and I think, is this a big thing? I think this one could have a long-term lasting impact, and that we'll look back and say, 20 years from now, if the cup keeps up, we'll look back and say only 3 times since the cup began has a team won both. And those seasons, it'll almost be like a legacy sweetener. You'll say, oh yeah, but not only did they win the title, they also won 58 games and won the in-season tournament or what have you. And it'll become sort of like when we're trying to compare across eras. And if you think back, the 2015 Warriors who won 67 games, or the next year that won 73, they lost the final one. But the year before that, 67 wins, and they were just beating everybody. Would the Warriors have won the in-season cup that year? It's impossible to know. But I would say there's a good chance. The 96 Bulls, a historical team, would they have won the in-season tournament if it existed? They're good chance. And I think we would look back at that and say, when we're talking about legacies, they get a little bit of an edge. It's interesting because the Thunder and Bucks both are in this final. And if the Thunder in particular win it, but I think even if the Thunder win it, I do think it'll be a thing when we get to the playoffs of like, hey, they could be the first team to get both of them, and that could be great. What the NBA Cup is not. So those are the things that are great about it. Elevate it. It's fun. People like us are going to enjoy it because we love basketball. What the NBA Cup is not is drawing in new fans. We saw the viewership for this has not been up. In fact, it's been down year over year. Not drawing crowds to Vegas. In fact, I don't like that they're doing it in Vegas. We'll talk about that in a second. But those games on Saturday, one of my biggest notes was how dead it felt in the arena. And my hunch is that it's not like it's just Hawks fans or just Bucks fans or what have you. It's kind of a hodgepodge of people who happen to be in Vegas and are going to go check out a game. And it had that energy. It almost felt like an all-star game in terms of big plays would happen and the crowd would kind of ooh and ah, but not necessarily cheer because they were there to be entertained, not necessarily to root for their team. So and then on top of that, you look at ticket prices, for this final. You think, oh, it's a championship, an in-season tournament championship. How big is it? You can basically get tickets for $30 to get into the door. So it's not going to be a thing that I think brings in casual fans, at least at the moment. And maybe it just needs the roots to run a little bit deeper. And I don't love this idea of it being an event. And then, as I just mentioned, it was on Saturday. The final is on Tuesday. Who goes to Vegas for Saturday through Tuesday? You're cutting it into your week, a week before Christmas, to go to Las Vegas to watch this team that you only had 48 hours to know that your team was even in the final. I think that makes a complication that actually hurts this. And when I was watching the broadcast, the home crowd makes a difference for a broadcast, and there was no crowd in that one. So I didn't like that. And then the trophy, I just don't think will be meaningful in and of itself. Whatever team wins it, it feels great, but it almost feels like a placeholder for that double win. The Lakers won it last year. Nobody thinks anything about the Lakers last year. They just were a team, and they happened to have won that cup. Some tweaks, because I like competitive games, some tweaks I would make. The elimination round was a lot more fun than pool play. And part of that is that the NBA has spaced this out so much. I do wonder if they could bring in 32 teams or play all 30 teams. The league will expand shortly, we all know, to probably Seattle and Las Vegas. So you get to 32. That makes for a 32-team bracket. Nobody was filling out a bracket, for the 8 teams making it to elimination play. That just didn't happen. If you make it to 32, well, the NBA sports viewing world, like the people watching this, not all of them are going to be diehard college basketball fans, but I bet you all of them or most of them fill out a bracket just because it's a thing to do. If you get 32 NBA teams in, would everybody fill out a bracket and you put more eyeballs on it just because now I have skin in the game? I think yes. Betting angles, all these different things. Could you make it 16? So it's not 32, but we're going to just make it 16. Half the teams get eliminated and go from there, maybe. And then I think pool play should lead directly into the bracket. One of the things that's tough is, you look at your team. Well, why are my team not in the finals? Oh, well, they lost a game back on November 3rd, and that's why. And you think, man, that was so far ago. I don't even remember that game. Did it have any context? I think having it to where it just kind of the pool play leads into the elimination round would make it a little bit easier. You take 2.5 weeks to tell the fans this is what's going on. Every game is this, I think would help. And then lastly, rivalries. I just mentioned storylines with Klay Thompson and the Golden State Warriors. I think making pool play the division would add to the rivalry. So now you have one game against your division that is a NBA Cup pool play. There's already built-in rivalry because you know these guys well. Now you play each other for actual stakes into this tournament, and then you get seeded. To me, that would be a cool way to do it. And, you can even break it up by night. Like, hey, Monday night this week, it's the Northwest and the Central divisions. They're going against each other. I think you could do cool things like that. So that was so those were kind of my thoughts on that one and the NBA Cup, which I enjoy the competitiveness of it, but I still feel like the NBA is trying to reach for and figure out what exactly it is. Lastly, let's see. I have odds and ends here. Oh, yeah, one odds and ends from the NBA Cup. The Mavs currently have 42 road games and 40 home games. This happened last year because, when you lose in the pool play, you get assigned extra games. Well, they get assigned road games, and here they are with 42 road, 40 home. That would obviously be unfair. But when you change the schedule at this point, somebody else is going to get screwed. This happened last year to the Knicks, by the way. The Knicks, but they switched with the Detroit Pistons, who were the worst record in the NBA, and made that an extra home game for the Knicks. You could probably do this now, but at the moment, we don't know who's going to be tanking. They haven't changed anything if they're going to for Dallas. If they don't, Dallas could have a complaint. Well, why did we have 2 extra road games this year than everybody else? But if not, you might wait to the end of the year and find out, okay, here's a tanking team late in the year. Let's just make that a home Dallas game. I think that's complicated and it gets into murky waters. Now ownership misses out on a little bit of income from their arena and different things. So it's kind of messy, and it just shows you how complicated the logistics are of the NBA Cup. Finally, Dennis Schroder is traded to the Golden State Warriors for DeAnthony Melton and 3 second-round picks going to Brooklyn. Schroeder's obviously going to the Warriors. This trade is interesting for a couple of reasons. I think there's 2 reasons that this one is interesting. The first is, and this is coming from John Hollinger, who had a fantastic report on theathletic.com. I encourage everybody to go and check out. There was a quirk in the CBA that allows for this specific type of trade. If a player gets traded on or before December 16th, that would be today, and the receiving team uses an exception to acquire him, as is the case here, his contract can be aggregated either the day before the trade deadline or the day of the trade deadline. If a player gets traded on the 17th or later and they use an exception to acquire him, his contract cannot get aggregated at the trade deadline. So what does that mean? It means that the Warriors making this deal on the first day of this unofficial trade deadline, them making this deal here allows them to retrade Schroeder at the end of the trade deadline here in a couple months because they did it in the timely fashion. And to me, when you see a move like that and then you hear a rule like that, your ears should perk up and say, okay, this might just be the first move to make the bigger move later on. That's the first part of this. So don't rule it out. And I know Hollinger did the math for us. If you're trying to get Jimmy Butler, who's the big name right now, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Schroeder get you close enough that you can make the perimeter work now. If you're just roping in a couple other teams, it's just margins there to make everything work. But you're talking about losing Kuminga, Wiggins, and Schroeder to bring in Jimmy Butler. I don't know if I love that personally. I mean, Wiggins is really good. Kuminga, for me personally, one of my more frustrating guys. I know Legs loves him quite a bit. And then Schroeder, who I'm pretty high on. That's a lot to give up for Jimmy Butler, who is such a trick-or-treat guy. You're either getting something great or getting something terrible. So I don't like that specific one, but that's not the only name that's going to open up later on. On the net side of this, it honestly comes down to the fact that Schroeder was too good. They are 10-15 trying to tank. Everybody knows that they're open for business. This is the first of many trades they're going to make this year. And they wake up today going, we're nowhere near the bottom of the standings and we're trying to rebuild. Dennis Schroeder's a good player. And so they have to get rid of him to some degree. the other part of this is that the Warriors, and this is the obvious one, their offensive rating with Steph on the court, 122. Their offensive rating with him off the court, 105. Absolutely craters what they do when he's not on the court. And then when you get to the late game offense, their offense is so predictable because there's not a lot of mechanisms, around him. You're going to be hunting for Steph. He's going to have to do an enormous amount of work to get open off ball. And then on ball, he's going to have to continue to get his work. So what does this do? It gives you the opportunity to play a really quick, dynamic ball handler alongside Steph Curry. And by the way, Steve Kerr has hinted at or alluded to the fact that he plans to start both of them. That would be your starting backcourt. And I like it. I got to be honest. Schroder is a guy that I think is actually undervalued what he does and what type of player he is. He was phenomenal for Team Germany over the last couple of summers, including helping them win a FIBA World Cup, which is no small thing, being able to win that one. That's not like, there's some joke of a thing. That's an impressive tournament to win, and he was a really big part of it. So after this last Olympics, we all remember the comment he made, which I thought was well-intentioned but bad word choice given the sort of socio-political environment following around Team USA, where he said, I think that FIBA, you have IQ play, and in the NBA, it's entertainment. Of course, that was what poorly received. But when I watch Schroder in the NBA and I watch him in FIBA, it's almost like two different guys. And the reason I think that, as I think with a lot of players of this ilk, the FIBA game is going to be a lot more orchestrated, and it is going to require things like how well you read the court, basketball IQ, these different things. In the NBA, there's a little bit less time for that. There's more spacing, more athleticism, less practices, fewer practices. So you have some different things that play into where I think those things become less. And sometimes high IQ players, my favorite example of this is Boris Diaw. Boris Diaw's on the Charlotte Bobcats, I think, at the time, on this contract, and they're thinking, man, this guy sucks. He's horrible. They get rid of him because he was so bad there and send him to San Antonio, where, in my opinion, he was one of the most important pieces of their early 2010s run. He was phenomenal there. And you think, well, he was on a team that was playing dumb basketball, and he was just a dumb player, but not a good player. You put him on a team that was playing extremely high IQ, read and react team basketball, and all of a sudden, you're like, oh, this guy has a good IQ. I think Schroeder's ability to get into the paint is going to be huge for them. But I think more than anything, he has a higher basketball IQ than his reputation. His reputation can be as a shot first, something of a gunner, overconfident, irrational confidence guy. I think that we're going to get a really good version of him in Golden State, because Golden State plays very high IQ basketball. They're at their best when the ball is popping. And having that north-south, like the ball pops and it finds a guy for an open three. We all know that works. But it finds a guy that's able to now attack closeouts, get into the paint, and really open up those tertiary kickouts. That's where I think he's going to be valuable. And I just think, I could be wrong on this. I could be very wrong. But I think Dennis Schroder is going to look like a significantly less selfish player than what we've seen from him. And that there's just going to be nights where Golden State looks incredible offensively, in large part because of how he stirs the pot. There you go. That's 50 minutes of ISO basketball talk right here with no Legler today. We have some super chats, James. I haven't been watching the chat. When I'm doing the solo show, I got to look at everything. Psycho Blue says, B-Ball Cthulhu thinks the NBA record being set for most combined threes and missed threes in different games in one weekend is why the B-Ball gods need to be deposed. He waits on the other side of the seal. Man, everybody has their own, right to an opinion here. Everybody has their right to an opinion. It's taste about what you like about the game of basketball. I will say, while I can agree with all the various things about the people that are really into the weeds, you can see the different ways teams get it, and actually styles are different. It's still the fact that there are so many threes, and you have nights where teams shoot 5 of 45 that you go like, what are we doing? We might have broken the game in a way. And I am one of the people that thinks that there are tweaks to the game that you can make because the value of the three-point shot has become above what is the threshold for the game still being entertaining. You disagree, it's fine. Everybody has a different preference, but that's my take on it. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that one, Cthulhu and Psycho Blue. Nico says, Mavs fans can't say PJ Washington was out against Thunder when OKC's second best player is out. Please stop. Yes and no. I 100% agree that Chet Holmgren is a more important player than PJ Washington in a vacuum, just a better player, what have you. I will say, so I agree with the general sentiment, but what I will say is that PJ Washington really is, he's like Aaron Gordon to Denver. he really is a Middleton to the Bucks. While he's not one of the two most important players, he does unlock something about the team that allows them to be their full self. And if he's not there, there's no one else that can do that. So Dallas fans, I give you a little credit. PJ Washington, absolutely integral to what they're doing. But that being said, Chet Holmgren also integral to what the Thunder are doing. Matt Herndy says, IST should give extra days off prior to those that qualify and then extra days off if you make the finals. This year's team were penalized for making it. There's also this factor of it, right? LeBron just took a 9-day sabbatical. Jamal Murray was able to take teams like the teams that did not make this IST got extended breaks, and there's nothing you can do about that. I honestly wonder if there will be teams in the near future, perhaps already happened, that don't take those pool play games as seriously because they look at it and go, we don't really care if we win or not. We have a veteran team that needs the rest, and we'd rather lose this one. It's entirely possible. Is that it?
That's all the super chats for us.
All right, let's cue that outro music. Everybody, thanks for hanging with me solo. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, enjoyed some of the insights here. And if you did, do me a favor, show the appreciation by throwing a little like. Make sure you subscribe and leave comment for us. What do you think about the legacy of the NBA Cup? Do you agree with me that the biggest thing is going to be for a team to be able to win 2 championships in 1 year? And that was like kind of sort of put a little extra salt on the flavoring there and say that team really had a great year because they won both tournaments. Let me know if you agree or disagree. We're off tomorrow. Enjoy the NBA Cup, but Legs and I will both be back on Wednesday. See everybody next time.
We all silly like the mayor.